Hi, I'm Dr. Gene Wright. I'm with the COPD Foundation, and I spent the latter part of my life understanding lung disease. But it wasn't until recently that I realized that as a woman, my risk of lung disease was the same as my risk of breast cancer. One in eight women are at risk of breast cancer, but one in eight is at risk of a chronic lung disease. Who knew? If I asked you to close your eyes for a minute and think of the prototypic person with a chronic lung disease, you might think it's an older male, maybe a cigarette dangling from the corner of his lips, maybe somebody of lower income, maybe somebody in the movies. But you wouldn't think of somebody that looks like you or that looks like me. But the reality is, what has once been thought of as the older male who's a smoker's disease is now the women's disease. Now, women of my generation could say, that's because we were victims, and I use that word specifically, of marketing campaigns that made us think that smoking was okay, right? We've come a long way, baby. We had cigarettes targeted right to our gender, our mindset, our values of how to look cool. And as a result, it did accelerate lung disease and the acquisition of lung disease. But it didn't accelerate our knowledge about lung disease. And in fact, that knowledge stayed off the front burner of researchers, of government, of community health, of public health. I don't know that it was always malicious intent, but as in many things, until you see it, you can't see it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's how I am with women and lung health. I now know that I'm more at risk for a lung health condition than I am for breast cancer. So I'm going to be monitoring both. I now know that women, when they do have a lung condition, it shows up earlier in life. Everybody right around menopause. We'll talk about that in a second. But we get it earlier in life, and even though our symptoms start earlier, it takes longer for us to get diagnosed. Go meditate on that for a few minutes and figure out why that delay in diagnosis. But if we get it earlier, we have a heavier burden of symptoms, meaning it's not just a little time, but we feel shortness of breath, particularly shortness of breath and exertion. Like when we're doing things, right? Moving stuff around, putting stuff in the back seat of the car, doing a project, wallpaper in the back 40, whatever we're doing. We notice those symptoms and we have a heavier burden. Again, more later, but probably because most of us have a shorter stature and a smaller lung cage. And so the symptoms come on more quickly. So we get it earlier in life. We have a heavier burden of symptoms. And even if smoking was one of the things that triggered it, uncovered it, accelerated it, cigarette for cigarette, the impact on women is greater than on men. So with lesser exposure, we get more disease. Who knew, right? I didn't know. I'm a doctor. I'm in this field. And we are just beginning to realize what an impact this makes on women's health. So the idea we're sharing is that you, as a woman, even if you're not a smoker, you are at risk for lung disease. In fact, when you go to other countries outside of the United States, smoking is a cause, but it's not the cause. Think of women cooking in a low resource country. They're using cooking over charcoal, often in a closed environment, so those fumes are going right up. But we have our equivalent of that. We have women working in nail salons with dust all the time. We have first responders responding to places of fire, not only smelling the smoke, but all the other fumes that come out of that. We have environmental changes that makes the quality of our air so serious now that our risk of chronic lung disease is accelerated by our zip code. For example, there's a zip code in LA, that if you live there and you're one of the higher rise apartments, there's so many buses that park there. And they're fueled so off, you are at higher risk. So we're gonna focus on women, the undiscovered organ, the lungs. And we know how critical it is to support our brain, oxygen, and everything. But how underattended it's been by the medical profession, by the government, and frankly by us ourselves. Stay tuned.